60 Plus Racing Adventures is the iRacing league for racers 60 years of age or over. It's certainly an area of racing we think of as defined by the youth, but this awesome and long-running community and series just goes to show us that there is in sim racing and racing enthusiasm across all age groups. They put on a great show and they really enjoy their racing. We love watching them here on RaceSpotTV, where we come to you from Oulton Park Circuit. David Haynes with Will Chadwick, and we have a season finale on our hands as well. Oulton Park looks absolutely beautiful, and it's well suited to this style of racing with the Indy PM18 feeder level open wheeler car. Let's look at that schedule. It all kicked off for season 26 at Laguna Seca. They went to Iowa Oval, they went to Manicor, Road America, Sonoma, the Nordschleife, Hockenheimring, Fuji GP, Long Beach, Sebring, Gateway. And here, round 12 at Oulton Park, we have RaceSpotTV live coverage of the final two races of this season. Yes, 26th season coming to a close. That is how long they've been going in 60 Plus Racing Adventures, just strength to strength with their community. And I like to say, more people turn 60 every day. So it is a growing championship and a really strong one as well, as evidenced by the 28 drivers that are present for this final round of the championship. And it's been even higher than that at points across the season.
Yes, it's a fantastic series, and I do love to look at this championship every time we come in. Here you see some of our multiple champions. You've got Stefan Rosin with 8 championships, Ragnar Wisloff 4. You can also see some of the last 4 seasons. Wisloff has been pretty, between Addy and Wisloff, we've always seen this battle continuing, and it's a great pleasure to be able to cast on this championship. And who's going to get it today, I'm not quite sure, but I'm sure you might have an idea, David.
As you can see, Stefan Roskin, the GOAT of this series, 8 times a champion, but in our modern era, and with the switch from the Star Mazda to the Indy Pro 2000, we're in the Ragnar Wisloff vs Russ Addy era. We'll see exactly what season 26 has in store for us, because Russ Addy leads the way just ahead of John Morgan and Paul Stump. And Randy Shoemake, Mike Grandy, Barry Hills, Ragnar Wisloff, Peter Holstrom, Bruce Poole and Mike McCormick as our top 10 of the championship. Heading into these final 2 rounds, Russ Addy looking to add a 4th 60 Plus Racing Adventures championship to his name. And John Morgan, that is a great season effort as well there. He's still within touching distance. And John Morgan is part of the Super 70s subcategory within this championship. Drivers, indeed, 70 years of age or over, and he has just been a consistent force of podium finishes, picking up race wins, second in the outright there, and looking handy for another Super 70s championship as well.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting looking towards this round. You've got those 3 title contenders. It could all be up for grabs, really, and I still would back Addy, and it's quite interesting to see how the championship has developed since I was last here and we were last here on RaceSpotTV. Obviously, we cover those 3 races across the season, and it's a surprise to see Wisloff so far down in the order, but it's a chance for people to get a chance at the championship other than Addy and Wisloff and your previous champions. And I think that those championship challenges will have practiced a lot for tonight's event.
And tonight's event is 2 races, each of them with their own separate qualifying session. So we are qualifying for race number 1 now. That is a 20-lap affair of this layout of Oulton Park. It's basically the full course, the long course, but without the chicane, without one of the chicanes. So I think a pretty good layout, honestly, for this car that when it gets into the race trim, likes the slipstream just a little bit. So you miss the chicane here, called Britain's, but you still do have the chicane at the end of this as you come over the crest, which I think is pretty good. It actually creates an overtaking opportunity where there isn't one without this chicane, whereas the other chicane halfway down the straight, I feel, takes away overtaking opportunity. So in this qualifying session, drivers get 2 flying laps. You see the timing column left of screen, that contains the lap times basically we've seen from the first runs out of our drivers. Now they're on their second run, looking to improve, which is typically how it works for this car in these track conditions. 23 Celsius on the track, 20 in the air, relatively cool. You look to still build tyre temperature, tyre confidence and pressure as you go along. John Morgan with the pole at the moment. Full stump eclipses that. And you can see a lot of change come in the last minute or so of drivers improving.
Yeah, and that's your championship challengers right up at the top. As it stands, Russ Addy only, I believe, what's that, 7th fastest? I'm just looking on the light tower. Yeah, 7th fastest. So, Paul Stump and John Morgan have the advantage going into this final race, and of course they're the ones that really needed this pole position here, which I know we've still got a little bit left in qualifying, but if they get this advantage, they may be able to turn that into that, you know, overhaul of maybe, what is it, around about 10 points in the championship. So it's their time to perform here if they want to win this championship, and it's certainly looking that way as we are into 4 minutes of qualifying.
Right as you said it, Russ Addy went to 4th, but here's Frank Butler to the line. Looked like it could have been just a little improvement there in 24th place. So our top 3 in the championship are in the top 4 of the grid.
Yeah, and it looks like, I don't know how many people still have laps left here, but it looks like most of your guys have done their laps and we're just waiting for the last few to come through and complete their laps here in qualifying. You are watching Gary Beestrom coming to the line. Number 64, classic iRacing number, the number 64. And we'll see if he can maybe set a time. Of course, here at Oulton Park, the off-tracks are pretty strict. Exit of turn 1 and exit of turn 3 are very, very sensitive on how far you can go wide, and that can cause you not to get a lap in qualifying. But as Gary comes to the line, it's 126.3. I think that's going to have him, yep, into 8th position. So a nice solid starting position for Gary, and it'll be thankful that he's actually got a lap in on his second attempt.
Yeah, the only other driver on track looking to set a lap is Miguel Correa, which is a pretty new name to me that I haven't seen. Almost all the names are familiar to me, but maybe Craig Vaught and Miguel Correa, 2 drivers more recent to this championship and to this series. And I say, more drivers turn 60 every day. They actually have sort of like a census date for each season, so it's not like drivers become 60 midway through a season and can join. I think if you're 60 by the end of the season, you're allowed in. They've got a sort of a census date each season for that kind of thing. For Miguel Correa, I think he actually keeps it on the track there, as he has a little bit of a slide though. The curbs and the crest is pretty nasty in this final sector of the lap. It almost feels as much rally stage as circuit race.
Yeah, that was a fantastic save into the Druids' double right-hander, and if that's not been an off-track throughout the other bit of the lap, that should be a lap clocked there for the newcomer to the series, or at least we think so. And with just 2 minutes remaining here, I think that might be everyone to go in qualifying. I think it's an interesting point to go on about this circuit layout is that missing that Britain chicane really opens up the passing opportunities, and one of the classic faults of this track is people may say it's quite hard to overtake, but opening up that straight down into the second chicane, Hislops, will make it much easier for drivers to make a pass here tonight.
Yeah, I've long said things can be improved by removing Britons, and I'm glad to see them follow through in this championship, creating great racing. Is that too much?
No, it's okay. I'm an avid local of Oulton Park, being my closest race circuit in the UK, but you can say that. I think it has some substance.
Yeah, fantastic. So with the way the qualifying format works, 10 minutes, but 2 laps allowed. Well, you see, around a layout like here, with our pole time currently of 1:25, they chew through the laps a lot quicker than they chew through the time. There are some other longer circuits you go to where 10 minutes is about right. Here, it leaves us waiting, and I don't think we automatically progress because there are a couple drivers like Gene Moore who haven't been out, Randy Shoemake who hasn't set a time. So we twiddle our thumbs a bit as we look to lock in the 28 car grid for race 1 of 2 in 60 plus racing adventures. But great to see everyone relevant to the championship, both present and competitive. It's very close through the middle of the qualifying there. You see, less than a tenth of a second, a car to a car to a car between Mike Grandy, John Hill, Craig Vaught, etc. There, sort of 11th, 12th, 13th. Kind of makes this 2/10 pole that Paul Stump has actually quite impressive, because that's one of the larger gaps between anyone in the top 10.
Yeah, it is a very, very big gap, and certainly the way he needed to start for this championship challenge. And as the flag falls on our qualifying session, we will see the grid shortly.
And it will be for a rolling start, and it will be for a 2-wide rolling start. So the rows are, I guess, as important as the numbers, though I reckon I'd want to be odd numbered on the grid when it comes to heading down towards turn number 1. That's where Paul Stump is going to be. On the front row, on the inside for turn number 1, John Morgan on the outside, then Mike McCormick and Russ Addy behind that. Row number 3, Barry Hills and Bill Smitham. Row number 4 is Gerhardus Jorrison and Gary Bystrom, Peter Hallstrom and Ulf Olsen. Row 5, row 6, Mike Grandy and John Hill. Then Craig Vaught and Eric Block side by side for 13th and 14th place. Next row with Steve Greenwood and Bruce Poole, Douglas Beasley and Eugene Clark alongside 17th and 18th. JC Hay, Bob Kern, Franz Josef Stum, Frank Butler, Piezzione and Miguel Correa, I think, are our last drivers who set qualifying times. The drivers without: Randy Shoemake, Richard Coulomb, Jerry Kerr and Gene Moore. And as we scroll through the grid, you will have noticed a couple of the team liveries amongst that. The sort of 3 championships on the line here are that outright drivers championship, the Super 70s championship, and also the teams championship, which really does give a good opportunity for the drivers who maybe aren't week to week competing for the outright wins to really just try to log their solid top 5s, their solid top 10s, and if their teammate alongside them does likewise, they can combine for a good team effort and maybe a team's championship. So it is the truncated pace lap, which means we are moments away from pace car pulling in and the green flag dropping on the first of 2 races for 60 plus racing adventures at Oulton Park on the international circuit. Paul Stump there has the inside line. The green flag waves so early before the pace car's even in the lane, and Paul Stump is alert to it. John Morgan likewise, but here's Russ Addy making big moves in towards turn number 1. Track limits are tough here. The tyres are so cold on this car that makes it very, very snappy with a short wheelbase. That is a mega launch from Russ Addy, looking to be a potentially 4 times 60 plus racing adventures champion. He's jumped from 4th on the grid to 2nd as Ulf Olsen snaps it around at the Cascades.
Yeah, a really unfortunate incident there for Ulf Olsen, but Russ Addy making the perfect start to keep his championship hopes alive. Obviously has that points advantage going into this one, and getting right up behind Paul Stump, your 3rd place man in the championship, it really helps him out into the start of this race. So now they get up to speed over the crest and down towards this Knickerbrook chicane section where you can try to overtake. You can take some different lines, and there's been some contact behind, though, someone, Gary Bystrom maybe even, it was, who got tangled up in the tyre bundle. They're now out wide and snapping back towards the racing line, one of the Anglo-Dutch racing cars, and that would have been Gerhardus Jorrison. So some carnage and drama on the opening lap to this point. No problems for Russ Addy, though, as he tries to set off in pursuit of another race win and some solid points. 1 lap goes by so quickly here. Yeah, and it's just something that can happen, unfortunately, with those immovable tyre barriers in that second chicane. And yeah, it's unfortunate that that's happened, but relatively other than that, everyone's got away cleanly, especially at the front of your field. And Paul Stump's starting to open up that advantage now. It's quite interesting for the complexion of this race.
Randy Shoemake, one of the 4 drivers with no qualifying time, who started way back in the field, has made 9 positions so far, and maybe looking to make a couple more. Here's Eric Block in tribute livery to the left-hand side, and as they commit to the super fast sweeping left to bring them towards the hairpin at the far end of the circuit, he manages to make a move.
Yeah, fantastic move there, going through Shell Oil's corner, now onto this elongated straight after the removal of Britton's. Going to be side by side. It looks like Peter Holtham and Bruce Poole going down into Hislops. It's going to be a slightly defensive line for Peter Holstrom, trying to just hold that. Bruce Poole decides to back out of it, the best of the idea for the situation at the time being, and Holstrom can now look forward to trying to enter that top 10 a little bit more and get some more points on the board for race number 1. Is
this Richard Coulomb there, one of the sort of series administrators who keeps it all ticking along as well, so it'll be sad to see him losing a couple positions down to 20th there, but he's still running. The car appears undamaged, and the same could not be said of JC Hay, Ulf Olsen, Gary Bystrom, Pierre Dione, Miguel Correa, and some others there. So it has been a rather tumultuous opening lap. They are settling into that rhythm now. There's Olsen. It's just kind of cold tyres. He goes down to the grass, and he gets stuck in the barrier there as well and can't get drive. In fact, it almost looks like the car high sides on a little crest near the barrier there. Hard to spot exactly what caused him that problem. And then elsewhere on the replay, looking at who tagged Bystrom, then whoop, sideways into the Stonehenge of tyre bungles.
Yeah, and it's just like when you say, we watch the second angle here, it's a really unfortunate incident down into Hislops. It's quite narrow, this track, and yeah, just the nose in, and it's a little bit of a half move, and unfortunately 55 on the outside wasn't really able to give the room, or didn't quite give the room, and yeah, an unfortunate contact. And when it's so narrow like this, you end up having that bit of a roadblock effect, as we watch on board here, and you can see it really stopping up into that Hislops, but some good avoidance considering the situation.
Monaco lap 1 vibes. Eric Bloch dropping down the timing significantly, and that's why that'd do it. It's way out in the gravel towards the end of the lap. It looks like could be after Druids.
Yeah, definitely. I think it could be on the entry into Druids. Obviously, you're trying to open up that corner as much as possible. Maybe even in the mid-corner, just losing the rear and getting into that gravel track, but I'm not 100% sure on that one. We look back towards the front of your field. You're currently looking at Russ Addy, who is obviously your championship leader as things stands. John Morgan, especially at the start of this race, looked to have quite a little bit of pace, and as we move further and further into this race, Russ Addy is dropping further and further back from that little kind of toe bubble in these cars, and that'll make him more and more vulnerable as laps go on to the likes of Morgan and McCormick.
So first, second, third, fourth, navigating their way here and then up the hill. This is Olsen back in the race. But they say you cut the course and you'll have to slow down and give up the time gained on that one. The transition back onto the pavement not working out, and you got it absolutely right, Will Chadwick, just opening up the entry of the corner too much, trying to turn in wheels on the grass. If we each had £1 for every time we've seen that, I reckon we could get ourselves a sausage roll.
Well, an Oulton Park local always knows the little tricks, so I'm very happy that I'm very happy we're here. I always am when the series comes here. It's my favourite track in the world, but we won't go into any of those favourite track politics as we look at the crucial top 4 battle here in race number 1. Gaps actually over the last lap have come down a little bit for Addy, starting to close a little bit on Stump, not quite enough to end up in the main majority of tow, but certainly a positive thing. As you're looking back, it's really close actually between Morgan and McCormick, even as close as maybe 1/10 there before we went through Island Bend, and as they exit Shell Oils, all of them are within a few tenths of a second.
Pretty critical, I suspect, for Russ Addy to stay within that 1 second of the race lead, because then you get to this part of the track here where the slipstream can drag you ever closer and the slipstream off the leader can protect you from those guys right behind. They are so close there. John Morgan on Russ Addy and Mike McCormick on John Morgan. Barry Hills is in 5th, not quite matching the pace last lap as he dropped back a couple of tenths, but they are by no means bolting away from the whole rest of the field.
Yeah, and it would certainly be... It's really important for Addy to keep this second place, because although his championship advantage over the likes of Stump and Morgan is around about 14 points, give or take 1 or 2 between Morgan and Stump, dropping further back than second, that advantage starts to become more to Stump, and Morgan will then be able to leapfrog him. And it's really important now that gap that he's managed to close to Stump continues to close, and he's able to retain that, so he's able to defend as well as he can.
Using that nice little bit of the banking, but like the little mini carousel at the Nordschleife, you've got to be a bit careful the way it unbanks and releases you a little bit before the corner ends, and you can end up going out a bit wide there if you're too committed and you're not wise to the tricks of the corner.
Yeah, there was a big effort to resurface Shell Oil's hairpin not too many years ago, but obviously this scan was from, I believe, 2011, so I'm not quite sure that will have been picked up in that one. But it's great to see these variety of tracks across the iRacing simulator, and you never know, could have a rescan sometime, because a lot of older tracks have been getting rescans recently, and it's an interesting topic to think about.
I'll tell you what track isn't getting a rescan, probably Oran Park.
Yeah, definitely.
Got 2 battles on your screen. For first, 4 cars engaged in battle up top. Down below, the 5 drivers dueling out for 8th place. And Franz Josef Sturm started 21st, he's 11th. And in that pack with a black car and green wings, not a green car or a red car or a yellow car. They're very close to being able to make a full Teletubbies or Wiggles situation there.
Yeah, and as if you were watching the top screen as well,
Power Rangers even.
Oh, don't get me started. Power Rangers is a core memory of my childhood. But as you saw, Andy actually made a little bit of a mistake into Cascades, and this makes him a little bit vulnerable to Morgan, but Morgan being pretty polite, still pretty patient. You know, we're only 7 laps into this 20-lap race, so there's still a fair distance to go, and Morgan isn't taking any risks. He knows that it's better for him to stay in 3rd in this championship fight than be out the race through having a crash. And all the drivers are always very respectful in this series, and it's some of the best driving standards we see through across all of sim racing. So it's a very, very good decision for him not to make any sort of lunge, and it's always what we come to expect from 60 Plus Racing.
You and I will reach 60 and still be hot-headed, sweaty tryhards, I'm sure. But some people mellow out with age a little bit, or just leave some of the nonsense behind. Riding from Mike McCormick there. He's got his team name on the side pod, Mighty Raven, so you'll spot his team about as well. Good space downhill there. Actually another corner where you kind of run out of space on the exit earlier than you think, and the track limits there are pretty harsh too.
Oh, extremely harsh. Cascades Corner has probably some of the harshest track limits in racing, as we see Bob Kern looks to have looped it coming out the final corner and over Deer Leap. Only lost 1 position to Eugene Clark, so not the worst, but certainly not what he would have wanted to happen. And yeah, as we look towards his front battle, it's all very stagnated at the moment. The only real difference is the fact that Stump, after that Addy mistake, has been able to open up an extra 0.5 of a second.
Pretty important for being able to break away from those cars behind from his perspective. So that's just a little wide. And I would have put money on him getting the grass on the exit of the corner, but in fact no, it's just the crest and being off the grippy stuff that's done him in. Meanwhile, that is kind of closer to how I imagined it would have gone. There's a few wrong ways to take that corner, and maybe even fewer right ways. There's
many ways you can take that corner, and there's many ways you can take a lot of corners on this circuit. it's steeped with elevation changes, cambers, and this therefore allows you to kind of take different lines that may work for some people, may even work in some cars specifically, especially the Cascades corner. Massively banked. It doesn't look it on sim, but there's a massive decline there in real life, and just getting your wheel right in that inner bit of camber can just help you get the exit so well going down to Island Bend and Shell Oils hairpin. But as we watch Addy off Shell Oils, the gap is only 2.5 tenths between all three cars here battling over second position, and there's certainly going to be a slipstreaming opportunity as we head down into Hislop. It looks like Morgan's holding back a little bit, having to go a small bit defensive from McCormack. The order remains the same as they head through Hislops and past Knickerbrook.
Yeah, I'm with you. Morgan almost more defending McCormack than thinking he can attack Russ Addy there. So 1.5 seconds, just so equal between the leader and then these three. It's the 5-car battle behind. Holstrom maybe coming under a little bit more attack from Stum and Vort.
Yeah, and as you look back towards this top 10 situation, Stum is on the edge here, and obviously everyone always wants to get a top 10. It feels like, you always set those little milestones and goals in your head, and it's important to do that to help your progress. But as we're looking towards this battle for 8th in general, it's pretty close, but no one's quite close enough to be able to make a move as things stand. We'll certainly be looking towards trying to do that. Very nice usage of the track on the exit there for Stum, and as they go down into Cascades for the 10th time here, everyone's kind of minding their own business, a little bit distanced apart, and it's ripe for a bit of chaos, I'm thinking.
Very interesting. Okay. Noticing Greenwood catching Hills as well. A little bit of a lock-up from McCormick, so things are starting to happen, reaching that halfway point. First 2 or 3 laps really held a lot of moves, mistakes, and action. Settled in a little bit. Now is it time to turn the heat up somewhat more. Stump just needs to be 99% here, but just make sure he keeps it tidy. Drama elsewhere in the field for Douglas Beasley and Bob Kern, and I didn't pick exactly where those two were, but they were both entangled and in the wall.
Yeah, I do believe Bob Kern was kind of hovering around that top 15 area. We did see that little moment. Oh, it's so easy to do coming off Shell Oils. The curb disappears, and then that's unfortunate really, because just car rolled forward a little bit, did get onto the brakes fairly quickly, but it wasn't enough time for the car behind to react. And yeah, like you see, the curb just disappears, and as we're on board here, you can see nothing you can do really, just holding the line, and unfortunately that's going to be that for the racers.
Yep. As the two cars ended up significantly damaged and stuck together, Greenwood made a move on Barry Hills. I think indeed he has. I think Greenwood's made a spot up into 5th.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think that's happened quite recently. And something that I was also seeing is we did look like Morgan was getting really, really close at one point, wondering if maybe he was starting to overlap with Addy on the left-hand soon timing tower. However, it looks to be, as we've seen it for most of the time, if anything, it looks like McCormack is primed to make a move on Morgan here, and that's not what you want in terms of this championship fight here in the final round. And as we look towards 12th lap now, because you're starting to think, when you're as a driver and you've got these championship situations, or kind of where you want to be, you're starting to think, like, if I don't make a move by this lap, I won't have a chance to maybe pull away or get the car ahead. Especially that's kind of maybe what McCormack is thinking if he believes that he has a significant pace advantage. And yeah, it's starting to become into the crunch time of this race now, because if you're not making a move soon, you could end up a bit late and $1 short.
looks like Craig Vort's made a move here in the solidly green car, up one spot on Franz Josef Sturm. Randy Shoemake now catching the tail of their group. So then there were 6 cars right here, led by John Hill in 8th, then Bruce Poole, then Hellstrom, then Vort, Sturm and Shoemake. And this is that front battle there between Hill and Poole. Not a place you often see a move happen.
Very, very good move there through Knickerbrook. Like you say, it's not often a place that you can make a move, but if you get that overspeed through the second part of his laps, you're able just to get up the inside, and a lot of racing respect shown by the drivers, and Poole is up into that 8th place. And like I said, it was right for a little bit of chaos, and we're starting to close up here as Hill has a little look to the inside. The drivers go over Deer Leap for the 13th time, starting a new lap. They're going to be going into Old Hall. It's certainly looking close, a little bit further back around that 10th position or so. And yeah, there's still a lot of position changing that could happen here with the remaining laps.
Back up front, and it feels like it's been this way for about 10 laps now. Morgan so close. You see, once they reach more speed, that slipstream from following the car behind really starts to get you closer. Not really noticing it closing car distances many other places around on the circuit. Just not high enough speeds or long enough straights. But there, boy oh boy, do you start to notice it in cars like these. Lead down to 1.4, sort of 1.3. Addy catching Stomp just a little bit.
Yeah, and it's kind of been that way throughout the race. It definitely looked like at times that Addy did have a little bit of extra pace, but I would suggest the inconsistencies have stopped him from making much time to the cars ahead. McCormack continues to harass the back of Morgan, and it's only a matter of time before we see someone blink and make a move in this pack. And at this moment in time, Mike McCormack is in the prime position to do so. You're not going to get much of an opportunity down through Island Bend, but as you enter Shell Oils, you're setting up the car wide, getting down in towards that cambered section. You're looking to get a good exit. You get all the power down, and now you've got that pretty long straight down to Hislop's. Of course, Morgan has a bit of a slipstream advantage from Addy ahead, and that'll make it a lot harder for McCormack to get any sort of overlap as we go down into Hislop. But, you know, with the consistency of these drivers through this section, you're certainly unlikely to see any moves into Knickerbrook, as we see a car wide being very, very kind to the leaders in the background.
Gerhardus Jorrison decided to just use it as a little bit of free parking, let the leaders through and then resume. So that's what he did, trying to stay out of their way. Doing a reasonable job of it, though it's still down to underneath a second now between Stump and Addy, so it might have thrown Stump off a little bit. He might have gotten Druids a tiny bit wrong. Russ Addy's got a chance, and there's more traffic all of a sudden as well for the leading 4. Get around Pierre Dione there. Track limit still being well respected, but Addy is not out of this for a race win.
No, absolutely not. Addy has put on a bit of a charge as we're talking at, and it looks to me like McCormack is looking up the inside of Island Bend. Surely not down the inside. What a move from Mike McCormack into the podium positions, and that's the last thing that John Morgan needs on this final day of the championship.
Morgan got pretty close to the grass on the exit there as well. Realised, oh, McCormack is going through. Indeed he did. Up into 3rd place. About 5.5 laps to go. Addy trying to keep the pressure on the race leader, but dropping back to just outside of that crucial 1 second window on the race leader. But there is still a little more traffic for them to get up to. They've gone past Dione and Jorrison. There really isn't that much after that.
Yeah, and that's going to be delightful for Stump to hear. Of course, you never really want traffic because it can enter variables into a race that you don't want to be there. As we look through the field, a shout out must go to Steve Greenwood, who's gone up 10 positions, and as things stand, I was going to say, is setting very, very competitive lap times to the front few, and still actually doing so. However, we have just had the fastest lap of the race from Mike McCormack after making that move down the inside through Island Bend, and looks like Russ Addy could be next.
Back markers of the lap traffic always add some level of uncertainty, and when you're the race leader, uncertainty is not what you want. But if you're second, third and fourth, maybe you want a little bit of it. If you've got all of the chips, why would you roll the dice? Don't know how casinos work, so that analogy probably doesn't hold up, but it felt like it probably should. Now McCormack with another little more aggressive bent going on, forcing Russ Addy to defend just about half a car width on their way down the hill. Addy holds on, but McCormack is thinking, now's my time to start to move forward, obviously.
Well, McCormack has certainly been one of those. He's been a bit more aggressive than we've seen through this pack, and that's certainly needed at a track like this. We're not like we were at when we were at the Nordschleife, the tourist version, or whatever it was, I'm not sure the full name of it, but that's where we last were. It was a massively long straight that anyone could make a move on, pretty much. But starting this 17th lap out of 20, across the line, the gap is as much as maybe a tenth of a second, just over a tenth and a half, but McCormack wide into turn one, and that, well, may have made him vulnerable to Morgan if he'd not opened up the gap behind.
It's kind of a awkward run wide as well, where he pinched it a little bit late on to try to keep it in the track limits. Probably still didn't work. I think as far as the slowdown penalties are concerned, they're a little more ferocious out there. That's the replay. Oh! And that's nasty. Stum or Vort? I think it was Stum. So he almost just gets a big chunk of understeer behind all the drivers in front and manages to just hook the little bit of the barrier that sticks out.
Yeah, they don't move at all, those barriers. And once you get a tyre wide at Island Bend, it's just a recipe for disaster. And unfortunately, that will be the end of his race with just only a few laps to go. McCormack has by far the pace advantage over this pack. He's closed up to Addy again, and Addy may need to be on the defensive here as we go into the final corner. Exiting it now, looking over Deer Leap again. The exit isn't quite good enough for McCormack to manage to close up or make any move down into Old Hall. But as we start the 18th lap, you would certainly think that a move or an attempted move is when rather than if.
Someone who was dumb enough to once charge at sprinting pace at a Tech Pro barrier to see if it would deflect. It didn't, obviously. They're designed for cars at hundreds of kilometres an hour, not me at 20. Off the road for Craig Watt after Deer Leap. He loses out a spot or two in all of this. Meanwhile, Mike McCormack is off the road and he nearly gets drilled as well. So from his charge forward into third at second place, it all comes undone.
And your top three in the championship are back into the top three. Almost as soon as he lost it, Morgan regains that P3, and as we're watching the final corner here, not sure who that is, but a nasty clomp on the barrier for Vort. And as we're watching the replay here for Mike McCormack, just getting a little bit on the power too soon. That desperation, dearie me, that was close, with Barry Hills, I believe. And yeah, that desperation just to get onto the power caught him out. Into Cascades here, the car, the 73, that is the car of Eugene Clark going wide. And yeah, just one of those incidents where running it in a little bit too hard, getting on the grass, and the grass is so aggressive in iRacing. There's no grip whatsoever, and as soon as you hit it, you are off into the ground.
Need to genetically engineer a British strain of higher traction grass. See if that'll do the trick. I think it was Greenwood who had to dodge Mike McCormack's Greenwood's up into fourth now. McCormack's back with Barry Hills and Mike Grandy, and they're battling over 5th place now. McCormick appears to have dusted himself off very nicely there, because I think he's getting away from Barry Hills and Mike Grandy with just 2 laps left to go.
Yeah, it's one of these things, he's probably more frustrated rather than anything. When you have one of those incidents and you know you've had the pace, you kind of just try and go flat out to the end as much as you can to try and make up for any mistakes that others might make. And looking in the distance, I believe that's Steve Greenwood who's made a mistake. So that gap's going to drastically close as we go on to the last lap soon here. And Greenwood looks maybe going through Hislop, through Nicker Brook. We're watching on your screens here a replay. First bit of Hislop's alright, second bit okay. Little bit of oversteer touching the grass. And like you say, there definitely needs to be some genetically engineered grass here because it has absolutely no grip.
Shortly about to start the final lap of the race, and you ask yourself, well, we are on the final lap of the race. Yes, now they have started it. You ask yourself, what are Monsanto doing for us, you know? Oh, high yield grain or whatever. No, give us high traction grass. That's what we need. Kids everywhere will be way better at soccer. Underneath the second, for first and second place, and there's a bit of carnage behind between Grandy and Barry Hills as well, though they dust themselves off and they continue at the Cascade, I think it is. Both of them had a little bit of contact, and it looks like Grandy looking to redress that one. Paul Stump's lead just 9/10 of a second and shrinking. Russ Addy, championship leader on the attack. John Morgan, Super 70s champion-elect, just behind him. And on the final lap, Addy gets about as close as he's been since lap 1, but it all comes just a little too late to make a charge at the win in race number 1. 7/10 in it with one more corner to go. Paul Stumps led this race since the drop of the green flag. He had an awesome qualifying pole position, predicted when Barney was going to wave the green flag to perfection as well to get a great run towards turn number 1. And from there, he's controlled race 1 of 60 Plus Racing Adventures, and the win is rightfully his. Addy and Morgan crossing in the podium positions. Greenwood, I'm not sure anyone looked like they wanted to hold on to that 4th place by a bit later on, but it's Greenwood ahead of McCormick. Peter Holstrom, has he come to grief on this final lap as Mike Grandy and Barry Hills have a drag race out of the dip and up towards the checkered flag? Olsen and JC Hay. No one wants to have a clean final lap.
Yeah, there's a bit of carnage there going through Druids, and as more positions chop and change here as we come towards the line, there still could be a couple to change going around the final corner, and I don't know what's happened there. Maybe a little bit of contact, trying to make a last lap move, but yeah, not ideal way to end your first race. And special shout out must go to Randy Shoemake, up 16 positions from his grid slot of 25th, and yeah, certainly a very, very good race 1 for him in terms of progression.
Absolutely, and have the opportunity in race number 2 with a fresh qualifying session to improve on the knowledge he's gained in this first race. Let's look at the results from race number 1. Paul Stump, Russ Addy and John Morgan, the top 3 finishers, covered by just about a second. Lets you know the level that those 3 drivers are at and how consistent and equal their pace was in this race. Greenwood came to 4th place from, may I remind you, 15th on the grid. Silent little assassin there, picking them off in the early race, and then as dramas befell Mike McCormick, for example, he picked up a couple more and also passed Barry Hills, who ended up in 6th ahead of Mike Grandy, Bruce Poole, Randy Shoemake and John Hill as the top 10. Craig Vaught in 11th, and then Eric Block, Eugene Clark, Bill Smitham, Richard Coolum. Peter Hallstrom had a problem on the final lap, and I think his last lap won't be scored, which for my timing will see him actually be 17th and functionally the first car a lap down behind Richard Coolum and Gene Moore, but it's kind of a bit of a technicality there. Definitely a lap down. Gerhardus Jorrison, Franz Josef Stum and Bob Kern to 20th. We saw many notable incidents, some of them on the first lap there as well, like Oulton getting stuck against the barrier, and JC Hay and Jerry Kerr also a lap down. Pierre Dione 6, Douglas Beasley 10, Butler 14, and Gary Bystrom 18 laps down, as the Stonehenge tyre bundle really did a number on his side pod. Drivers are coming by to chat with us, which we love, and we have got, by the looks of things, second and third. I am going to speak to John Morgan before you speak to Russ Addy in a minute, Will. So, John Morgan joins us now, and it's a pleasure to speak with him. You are absolutely engraving your name next to Super 70s champion by all accounts.
Yeah, it's been another good season. You know, racing with these guys, it's such a great group. It's, you know, it gives you the motivation to work at it because every week it's just a lot of fun.
Talk us through your perspective of that race then. It was kind of yourself, Mike McCormick and Russ Addy as some kind of flight formation for almost 15 laps by the looks of things.
Yeah, it was. This place it's tough to pass here, and when you get three drivers like Russ and Mike and myself, you know, in a draft train, it's just very difficult. Mike made a great move to get by me. And, you know, it's a little dangerous, but it's almost what you have to do to get by somebody here. I mean, I took a couple looks at Russ, but I knew how risky it was, so I backed out.
Yeah, interesting perspective there. Broadly about this season, a street track or two, a couple ovals, sort of broadly following the official series of this car as well, for everyone to be able to practice the tracks and really get experience with them.
Yeah, we talked about, we've tried that quite a bit. The funny thing is, the discussion now is maybe move a little bit away from the official series. We host practice sessions on Saturday, Sunday, and Tuesday, and then an hour before the race. So we offer plenty of practice, to practice with the guys that you race with, which I think helps a lot, and everybody sort of learns everybody's habits and makes for better racing.
Beauty. Congratulations on that third place. You got one last race left in the season. Can you find 1.047 seconds and come away with a win?
I don't know. It's going to depend on qualifying and getting a start. You know, Russ pulled quite a move at the start to slip by me, but I know Russ, so I guess it shouldn't have surprised me, but I'll be there. I'll be giving it my all.
If we don't chat again, congratulations on a great season, and we look forward to seeing you in race number 2.
Thank you, David.
They're absolutely lovely guys, Will, and Russ Addy's no exception, and he's coming your way.
Russ Addy, well, champion elect as things stand, going into the final race. We saw you were quite, I'd say, conservative, but you also had a really good pace. Actually, your start was incredible, and it was what built the foundation. Kind of talk us about that start and what was in your mind going down into Old Hall Corner, turn number 1.
Well, my teammate told me I needed to finish 3rd or better, and qualifying 4th wasn't going to get it, particularly with Paul. He is so fast. And I just held it as tight as I could, and fortunately everybody is gentlemen racers, and got the 2nd place and held it.
Well, it's the kind of aggression you need to win championships. Going into the final race of the season, of another season, I think it's season 23, is it? What's your aim going into that final race? Go out in style with a win?
Oh, I'd love to. There's so many guys that are so fast. There's 5 or 6 that can win just about every race. So I think I have it wrapped up. We'll see. I'll just do my best.
Well, we wish you the best of luck going into the final race. Hopefully we'll speak to you again later on. But good luck for qualifying, and go out in style.
Thank you so much, and appreciate you broadcasting this, and I really appreciate racing with all these guys.
Thanks, Russ. We appreciate you too.
Take care.
So lovely, David. I love him so much.
Brings a beam of sunshine to my heart. And a beam of sunshine is what it takes to grow my genetically modified high traction grass that hopefully they'll have time to lay down for race number 2. That one's coming up here on RaceSpotTV, and it'll have its own qualifying session as well, and we'll see if in just 2 laps with the challenge of the track limits around here, if anyone else can lay down a qualifying time to put themselves in a position to challenge Paul Stump in race number 2. Stick with us here on RaceSpotTV. When we come back, the final race of the season for 60 plus racing adventures. Time now for the final race of 60 plus racing adventures for this season 26. And they follow the sort of iRacing season schedule of kind of 4 in a year, but that still tells you how long they've been going with the 60 plus racing adventures, going strength to strength. And more people turn 60 every day. David Haynes here with Will Chadwick. They're not far away from kicking off qualifying, a brand new qualifying session, a clean slate for race 2.
Yeah, very excited to see how things go. I think it's going to be interesting because there was a few key performers in that first race, such as Steve Greenwood up 10 positions, and the other one was I'm not quite sure off the top of my head, but we saw Steve Greenwood up 10 positions, and there was another that was up 16. So I think if they get a better qualifying, we could see quite a changed order going into this final set of qualifying. We've got 2 minutes 50 left on the practice, and just the last chance for the drivers to get updated to the new conditions, potentially. Obviously, temperatures can change slightly across sessions, and that can sort of change the body language of the car. So it'll be interesting to see what these drivers make of the next qualifying session, and hopefully we end the season off with a bang.
We ended on a high, not
well,
a bang,
yeah,
but I'll take that
you never know at these days. I think we should have some fireworks, right? So clearly iRacing needs to implement a fireworks system, so when we finish a season you can pick a little checkbox and it says end of season fireworks, and then whatever track you go to you can check the box, and then whenever you end the season, your final race, you get fireworks. How great would that be?
I like fireworks.
I'm glad. Most people do, apart from dogs. Poor dogs. But dogs don't like fireworks. But most people like fireworks. And then we would actually end the season with a bang.
Yeah. I love to overestimate how expensive fireworks are. They are suspiciously affordable.
Exactly. And that is more reason to have virtual fireworks, because they don't cost anything. Well, apart from the coders' wages that code it into the game, and what you could consider they could have done for coding cars.
Updating tech specs?
Or tech specs, good point, because people wouldn't update tech specs, would they? And they wouldn't ever get the liter of an engine wrong, would they, David?
That'd be ridiculous. And
No.
imagine it was up and incorrect for a whole year. That would just never happen.
No,
We're
I
a minute
don't.
away now from this practice session ending and clicking over into qualifying, and what we saw from race number 1, setting is exactly the same for race number 2. A lot of the action happens in the early part of that 10-minute qualifying session.
Yeah, and like you say, I think we're going to see a lot of laps early on. Maybe some people leaving it a bit later. Potentially they would want to see what times people set. So always maybe it's kind of the best of both worlds. You either go into a qualifying session not wanting to know what any others do on times, and you're kind of just focused on yourself, set the best lap you can do. Or maybe you want to know the intel. You want to know what your benchmark is so you can push hard enough to get it done. Because sometimes you might go into qualifying with the mindset of just keeping it clean, staying off track free. Obviously, he's going through Cascades here, such a marginal off track on the outside. Maybe your goal is just to get a lap in. So it'll be interesting to see how the drivers approach it, but we do expect to see most laps within the first 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, we do. It's sort of 90 seconds to get around for the outlap, and then of course 2 laps in the qualifying session. You could have it all wrapped up in about 4.5 minutes if you really tried inside of the 10-minute session. Not everyone will go immediately. Most do, because they don't fancy sitting on their hands or twiddling their thumbs in the early goings and, risking missing out later on, when they could just get out there, do it, and then sit on their hands, twiddle their thumbs, waiting for the grid procedure later on. So, taking a look at McCormick, I think it is in the 99, indeed, to the scene of where he made probably his boldest pass in race number 1.
Yes, very, very good aggressive pass. Got him into that third position. Now you're on the scene of where it all went away, unfortunately. But McCormack be looking to strike back. Had the fastest lap in race number 1, so surely a favourite for pole position here in the final race of season 23.
Track conditions statically exactly the same as they were in race number 1. Nothing really to speak about there. It's sunny, but it is a little crisp, not unlike Oslo, Norway today.
A little... what temperature is it? I have no idea what the weather is like in Oslo,
on the
Norway.
outlap he's found the wall. Mike McCormick, not the preparation you want. It's reset on the
I think
outlap.
he'll be alright. Yeah,
I don't
he
think
won't
that's
have.
cost him anything than, about a minute of his life.
Well, we've got ample time in this session, so you're going to find the limits on your outlap. I guess that's fine. Obviously, you can reset to the pit lane and your magic mechanics fix it within 0.1 of a second, but you're watching Russ Addy on his first qualifying lap and nicely within the track limits through turn number 1.
Yeah, a little bit of a slide trying to warm up those tyres downhill at the Cascades turn, another place where the track limits are strictly enforced on the exit, so you can't get out there. Typically you think this first lap is a banker. Very, very snappy again off the exit there. It'll be a while before he comes up on another corner.
Yeah, so down into Hislop, you're picking your braking point, braking about the 75 metre mark. Down through the first apex, you're aiming to not compromise this run through this corner so you can set up Knickerbook nicely, and now you've got one of the longest straights on the lap. Up through to Water Tower, which is this little left-hander that you're going to come through now, and into the double apex right-hander of Druids. Important to hit both and stay as close to the edge as possible. Exiting nicely, always a bit easy to lose the rear over that crest, and down into Lodge Corner. Getting on the inside, always like to use the curb there, out on the exit, and over Deer Loop.
And to kick off the cascade of times that are going to go to the timing tower, Russ Addy goes to 8th because on the provisional pole, Ragnar Wislov. I swear we didn't see him in race number 1, but obviously he's docked, run ashore, and we've got him for the finale, the final race of 60 Plus Racing Adventures this season.
Would it be a 60 plus racing round without a bit of spice from Ragnar Wislov? Of course, like you say, it's almost like we didn't see him in the first race, but perhaps using that first race as a bit of a practice session, bit of a test session to find a bit more pace. And as things stands, a tenth of a second advantage over Steve Greenwood, your season 5 GP3 champion in the 60 Plus Racing Adventures League. Could wrap up pole position here for Wislov.
Of course, the other thing some of the drivers keep their eyes on is the team's standing. And R&R Racing look to be doing very well in that. That's the combination of Russ and Randy, Russ Addy and Randy Shoemake.
So Barry Hill's to the top, I believe one of the Super 70s category contenders, and I believe that might have been his last lap there, so kind of matching the pole time that we saw last time out. John Morgan to the line. I believe he was 3rd place in the last qualifying session, but can only go as good as 6th place here.
Looking to Gerhardus Jorrison to improve on a 1 minute 26.8. The driver's a little further around the lap. It's a very tidy late apex there and a millimetre from the grass. Some Googling, and my pleas are going to go unanswered because Monsanto was acquired and folded in 2018, so I'm way way late on getting them to do my agricultural work. Gerhardus Jorgensen, it's not too late for him to improve, not too late for Ulf Olsen to improve, not too late for Bob Kern to improve, or indeed Gene Moore to just get started. So Jorgensen, tidy enough. This will be the final attempt. Needs 1.2 seconds to get on pole. Needs 0.14 seconds to improve one position to 12th. Anything more than that, maybe a little bit of a blessing. Gerhardus Jorgensen to go to third place in the second row of the grid, finds almost a whole second, lap 1 to lap 2.
Well, like you say, that tyre warm-up period can be quite a significant gain in grip, and a gain in grip always comes with a gain in confidence. That second lap from Gerhardus Jorgensen was superb and got him onto the second row of the grid here as things stand. Gene Moore coming round about half the lap here now, so seeing whether he can improve. Not set a lap time so far, so potentially could be his first lap or a second that had been off-tracked. And actually that first sector looks pretty decent in my books, but I'm not quite sure about the second.
We'll have time for his laps the way he's going at the moment. Fiendishly comparing all the sectors to see where he was going to go, but it was giving me nothing but an ice cream headache. So moves to 21st with the first lap, and we've seen that finding a second or so on the second lap, that's not why it's called that, but it's entirely possible. And that put him maybe kind of closer to 12th, 13th. So anything above about 15th out of this second lap, be a great effort.
Absolutely, and matching his personal best in Sector 1 from the first lap. Like I said, I already thought it was a pretty good Sector 1, so potentially the time to gain here is really in this second sector. You will spend more time in the slow corners, and we do have a pair of slow corners coming up now. As you enter Hislops, getting that right-hander, compromising the left, and getting your way through Knickerbrook, making sure to get as good of a run as possible up the hill, and we'll see that second split time not too long from there.
Yeah, it's not all personal best sectors on this one from Gene Moore, but he has picked up a little bit of time in a couple of places. So I'm not sure we'll see a big haircut on the lap time at the end of this one, but it is tidy for the moment. There's another personal best. So from a 127.5, we go to a 127.3 for Gene Moore, and it gets him one spot and into the top 20, and he was the last car out on circuit.
Yeah, so quite a changed order that we saw from the first race. Barry Hills on pole position, we believe, and that's going to be really interesting for the final race of the season. Rosadi, again, pretty consistent performer out there in fourth, and I'm pretty excited to see how this second race of the day will go. And you know, maybe even Paul Stump coming from a little bit further back without a qualifying, your race one winner with a qualifying that potentially would want to forget.
So what do we make of that grid then? Two drivers without qualifying times. Mike McCormick, JC Hayes. So for Mike McCormick,
oh wow, yeah.
Boy, oh boy. I mean, we saw problem on the first outlap, and then after that tried to set lap times, none of which were valid. So the driver was racing for a podium, racing for a win in race number 1, nothing to show from it for qualifying for race number 2. Let's look at that full grid of 25 drivers though. On pole, it's Barry Hills sharing the front row with Ragnar Wisloff. Very clearly see the pole sitter's teammate Gerhardus Jorgensen will be starting in line behind him on the inside for the opening corner. There's Russ Addy, champion-elect, it's very easy to say, in fourth. Steve Greenwood and Ulf Olsen 5th and 6th. Addy and his teammate, though, still some work to do to secure and completely wrap up that team's championship, so that could be a focus. John Morgan, Bill Smitham, Mike Grandy, Gary Bystrom, Paul Stump and Bruce Poole. Bystrom, absolutely one of the drivers who could improve on their race number 1 results by having a clean lap 1. Douglas Beasley, Randy Shoemake, Eugene Clark, Richard Coulomb, Piedzione and John Gill. Randy Shoemake there, part of the team's championship leaders. Bob Kern, Gene Moore, Franz Josef Stom and Jerry Kerr and Frank Butler, the last drivers with qualifying times. And it's those without where there is some interest to be had. Mike McCormick, 24th on the grid. JC Hay, 25th. So Bruce Poole and John Morgan, second in the team's championship with their combination Can-Am Racing. And Ram Racing is Ragnar Wisloff and Mike Grandy. So a good result from them definitely could actually leap them second into the team's championship. When we come around the final corner, this safety car pulls in very quickly. Barney, very enthusiastic to wave the green flag.
He always loves to wave that green flag, and for one final time this season, the grid lined up 25 strong for the final race, and who will take the honours here for the ending of season 23?
The safety car driver chucks it out of the way. He does green flag wave and Olsen and knows what's up. Great jump from Barry Hills, not a good one from Gerhardus Jorrison. Almost caught napping, and indeed is, as Russ Addy and others try to challenge him in towards turn number 1. Barry Hills trying to convert that race lead down the hill into this left-hander. Track limit's important. Tyres super cold here early on. All clean through there. Mike McCormick has gained 4 positions so far already off this race start, so I actually would not count him out of a podium. Very Steve Greenwood-esque in race number 2 from him.
Yeah, very good start from McCormick, and a few others that have gone up position. Paul Stump, Mike Grandy and Russ Addy all making a position on this first lap inside your top 15. A few others as we go down into his lops. Looks like it's really close between the 55 of Smithen and Stump. And yeah, it's going to be interesting as you're watching Barry hit. Wow, that's a lot of exit used. A lot of bravery on lap number 1. That's a good amount of track usage.
I think Mike Grandy might have clipped Gary Bystrom's monument. He's under an immense amount of pressure further back, but Barry Hill's starting to come under some pressure at the race lead with Ragnar Wisloff and Russ Addy, 2 formidable champions of this league, hot on his heels with the first lap completed. Those 3 within a second for the race lead. Bystrom starting to drop back a tiny bit as well, all chopping and changing, and a good qualifying, I think, doesn't set a representative grid for the race and leaves a little more excitement for the second course.
We certainly seem to have a lot of passing in these races, and that's always good to see. As a commentator, a number of people have gone up and down positions on this lap number 1, and someone's off in the background. Who was that? I'm not quite sure. It was Gerhardus Jorrison. Gerhardus Jorrison has gone wide at Island Bend, and that might be race over as it looks, and it is as he toes back. Not quite sure he's towed back to pit lane, but at least waiting for other cars to come through.
Wisloff staying in second, Addy staying in third. It's further back between Stump and Smitham where the battle is on. Smitham to the inside, leaves space for Paul Stump, but off the track. Greenwood.
Yeah, Greenwood had a good start, was up into 4th position.
Oulton's got massive damage heading up the hill.
It's all carnage here on lap number 2. I mean, we've seen a lot of stuff happen. Multiple cars have gone off the track. Your top order still remains relatively the same, but you know, likes of Bystrom now making up positions, and we've seen even Randy Schumacher's up 5.
Here's a move for the lead. Ragnar Wisloff in turn 1 down the inside. 4-time champion takes the race lead. Barry Hills is just still going to hold off Russ Addy though, who looked to try to sneak through. He's off his line and he's out wide. Barry Hills. Addy with a big snap of oversteer trying to take the tight exit. doesn't work. He drops back in line and lets Ragnar Wisloff just a little bit off the hook. Addy senses maybe if he's going for the race win here, he's going to have to move forward quickly and not let Wisloff get away. This is Greenwood, and oh, they did touch. Look how hard it's Orison to go off into the grass. And then Oulton later on around the lap found the wall heading up the hill. So, takes 2 to tango at Island.
Yeah, and like you say, Greenwood also came unstuck a bit deep into his slops, catching the grass and then collected. Right, that's the kind of the picture. So collected by Oulton, and then Oulton seems to have maybe had some suspension damage. Also the 99 car cutting his slops as well. That's Mike McCormack who'd made such a good start. And yeah, that was a bit of carnage there.
Sure was. Out the final corner, Ragnar Wisloff enjoying the fruits of his labour with the race lead from Barry Hills and Russ Addy. We find Bill Smith and Gary Bystrom, Paul Stump. Stump charging his way through the field moderately, +3 positions. Late apex as you want to take if you're not going to go out wide there. He gets the wide entry looking at the drivers in front, and for Bystrom, that's dangerously close to the track limits there, and slippery grass.
Yes, no genetically engineered grass for race number 2. They weren't able to sort it out, but as you watch your battle for 6th position here, it certainly seems to be closing up between Bystrom and Smitham. Going to be a good run down towards Hislop, that gap going below 0.2 of a second now as they head down into Hislop's corner. Going to be to the outside for the number 64 of Bystrom. Around the outside into Hislop's. We'll have the inside for the second part. It looks like Bystrom has held it around the outside again, and Smitham, I think, holds it. I'm not so sure anymore. I forgot which car's which.
Bystrom has got his nose in front. He's going to have the outside for the next corner. In all that excitement, Paul Stump tagged the grass behind them and he went off. Bystrom swooping around the outside, just needs to keep it on the road to make a good move. And this is Paul Stump falling victim to just getting a little too keen.
Yeah, and then having to wait for the rejoin as well, and that's such a long wait. It's painful, but you know if you rejoin too early, that's going to be the end of your day. I believe we maybe even saw Greenwood into the pit lane, so that explains why he's dropping back. Looking towards the front of your field, Russ Addy on Barry Hills. That gap's closing to below 0.2 of a second as they head round Island Bend one more time. And certainly you're thinking that your key passing opportunity for this lap will be into Hislops. Pretty late on the brakes for Addy as he aims to get quite a good exiting here, but been good for Hills and still has that tow of Ragnar Wisloff ahead. And it certainly seems like the order will remain the same at the moment.
Dramas for Gene Moore. Just before that hairpin, he's been the next victim to go out wide at Island Bend and tag the grass. Meanwhile, Barry Hills, he's doing the mowing out there. No speed up the hill. Russ Addy just needs to pick a clear lane, but that's easier said than done. He goes through in second place. Hills wide at Mickabrook, doing a little bit of what maybe Ulf Olsen might have done. John Morgan in 4th, sneaking up on them. Elsewhere for the 89, JC Hay. He's doing donuts. And what is hay but genetically engineered grass? So this is what happens for Moore. He's on the tight line trying to make the pass. He just goes out wide. No grip, no grip, no grip. Tyre barrier, damage.
Yep, and you said that perfectly. As you can see, the iRacing damage model punish him quite a lot. Watching down in towards the hairpin, this is what happened to JC Hay, catching the tyre barrier, so that's why we saw some pretty well executed donuts, but hopefully no rear suspension damage there for Hay.
I'm worried they were well executed because he only had drive to one wheel.
That is
like
definitely something that could have happened.
The rear left drive shaft out of that.
Well, yeah, potentially. I'm not sure if we've seen him cross the line since, however, that could be the end of his day here this evening for the final round here in the 60 Plus Racing Adventures. And as we're watching more cars come through, obviously Hill's making that mistake. We did note lap number 1 being aggressive on that outside, and Ops this time to be a little bit less aggressive, and certainly has some work to do if he wants to catch up to your top 2 drivers. But as things stand, Wislov, although we saw not much of him in race number 1, is commanding it in race number 2.
Absolutely. At the moment, officially, Ross Addy looks like he's got the fastest lap of the race. Gary Bystrom actually maybe does. Well, there is a lot still to play out in this race 2 of 60 Plus Racing Adventures. Wislov just working on that lead, and we've seen if you can keep it 1.2 seconds, 1.5 seconds, the driver behind has got to work so hard to close that up versus if they're just, pardon me, within that 1 second.
Yeah, like you say, the toe effect in a over-body wing downforce car is quite significant. Of course, all the aero wake that these things kick off ends up being quite a nice little bubble of not much. Obviously, there is still there, but you get it's easier for the car behind to punch through, and that therefore helps with the top speed, which helps them to gain on the drivers ahead. So, very interesting.
Related to Adrian Newey, your understanding of aerodynamics is unparalleled.
It's out of this world, right? We can start talking about underbody aerodynamics in a minute. But as you watch here, the number 54 of Paul Stump not having a good race. Your race 1 winner getting a little bit wide there out of Lodge Corner, and then that grass that's not genetically engineered is just so slippy.
Maybe it has been, and that's why it's so slippery.
They're
breeding AstroTurf.
We never thought about this. All this time we've been saying how we need to genetically engineer the grass to be more grippy, when in fact iRacing could have already genetically engineered it to be less grippy. Deary me.
To nature. Well, the drivers getting engaged in some shenaniganry around the rest of the lap. Mike McCormick stuck a very bold move on what might have been Pierre Zione. We saw someone else cutting through a little bit of grass, but here's Gary Bystrom and Bill Smitham. Smitham picking up a decent toe here and keeping Gary Bystrom honest, as the two of them have got best lap times down in the 1:25s, which only a small handful of drivers can lay claim to. That small handful of drivers being about 5 or 6. Shoemake and Bruce Poole behind that. Whoa, Bystrom has a rear lockup on the way into the section of the track that he made so famous in race number 1, and it puts Bill Smitham right in behind him. Some great battles here, 6th and 7th, 8th and 9th.
Yeah, like you say, some really good battles, and one of the quirks of the simulator is as soon as you lock those rears, you're overheating that rear tyre, and that can make the rest of your lap so difficult. We saw going through Hislop, Bystrom holding on to the car just about as those rears slid around, just generating more temperature as they did so. But thankfully, Bystrom able to hold his position and also keep those tyres under control. You look back towards the 4th place man of John Morgan chasing down Barry Hills as we speak, up 3 positions from his qualifying position. A notable one on the outside though, is even though we saw that mistake from McCormack, still up 11, so cracking start for him either way.
Run from it, fear it, dread it. John Morgan podium still seems to arrive. That's sort of his MO. Don't see him making big flashy moves or low percentage, high risk attack for the race win. You just see him bubbling his way up towards the podium position relentlessly, and that's delivered him a couple of Super 70s championships and a couple of outright championship top 3s as well. Delivered him some great results. Now, hooking up towards Barry Hills, who we've seen just maybe struggling with the track limits in places, struggling with exactly how much risk to take pushing around here to try to extract performance.
Well, it looks like the pressure is going to be piled on Barry Hills here. Fastest lap of the race. Oh no, that's Bruce Poole that's gone off, fighting for that top, I think it was 8th place, and that's going to be race over, wheel off, Exeter Druids. That's such a shame.
Indeed, very significant damage. This is how it just gets wide, pushes out across the crest, snaps back and finds the wall that Mike McCormick found in qualifying. He doesn't even try to do anything fancy. It's just bumpy, slippery and snappy. It's not unlike a crocodile now, I think.
It's like the final race of the day in touring cars, if you think about it deep down. Everyone's gone out there, final race of the season.
Bystrom, something's happened to them.
Yeah, it looks like it, both dropping down the order. I'm sure we'll get a replay of that shortly. But as things currently stands, it's Mike McCormack who will be attacking Eugene Clark going down into his laps. So super effective down this long straight, up the inside here for McCormack. Move completed! And that looks like Eugene Clark's got on the grass on the outside and has gone for a spin.
Might get squeezed out there, but we've seen how easy it is to just have a little kiss of the grass. And not the first driver to do it. Might be the last with only 10 laps to go. See, race lead gone from a second and a half in the favour of Ragnar Wisloff to Russ Addy, turning up the heat. Now within about 3/10, right in range to get that beautiful service in that aerodynamic bubble of lower pressure air behind that my colleague Will Chadwick described so eloquently and scientifically earlier.
Oh, don't you worry, I'm always here to give you the most detailed insights as your colour commentator. Well, what's more important at the minute is this battle for the race lead. Your 4-time champion-elect, I believe, battling with the 4-time champion, Ragnar Wisloff. It's like Sebastian Vettel versus Alain Prost. Never happened, probably never will happen, but it would certainly be a good spectacle if it did.
I reckon you could get those two with some RC cars or in Race of Champions or something. They're both around and not shy of a little, media appearance or, something in benefit of a good cause. That's our next campaign. Once we get grippier grass, we'll do that.
Slowly taking down the things that matter here on RaceSpotTV. David Haynes and William Chadwick doing the good cause, really, at the end of the day. But
you're clearly running for the vice president role tomorrow.
Yeah. I mean,
in this world domination scheme.
Obviously, because you're really the guy that goes out there and speaks it. I'm more of just helping marketing and supporting your points.
Good ideas, man. The lead is hot, though. Underneath 2 seconds. Russ Addy feeling maybe a little bit of push understeer. Island Bend there as close as he was to Ragnar Wisloff, and of course arriving at more speed than he would without that slipstream as well.
Yeah, and as you say, down into his slots for another time. That gap closes up, but just not quite enough. Something you notice when you look towards the front of these fields in these Formula cars is overtaking becomes harder and harder. But it surely can't be as hard as at Monaco this weekend when we saw a grand total of basically no passes in the Formula 3 race.
I watched a little bit of that, and it's kind of sad.
Yeah, but we don't see a lack of passing here in the 60 Plus Racing Adventures League in the Pro Mazda 18 or Dash 18, however you say it. The feeder series, kind of, for the Indianapolis cars. Of course, Indianapolis 500 just went on last weekend. I don't even know if I can say that, actually.
Did it?
It
might have.
I don't know, actually. I thought some people went round in circles for a little bit.
William Chadwick.
Yeah, these are my views. But hot maybe battles. A race went on.
For all of your top 4 with 3/10 for that race lead and pressure slowly mounting. John Morgan as well. Jaws music playing as he hunts towards a podium position behind Barry Hills. Grandy's in 5th, but his last lap was less than hot. Gary Bystrom's was not bad in 6th, so they might even catch up towards a top 5 there as well. Look up from the back marker in front of Ragnar Wisloff. I think it's the repaired car of Gene Moore. Probably is. It is. So that's the next distraction for the race leader.
Certainly, if I had my pretend lights in my F3 car, I'd be flashing them a lot right now. Because the last thing you want to see, we talked about it a little bit last race, but Wisloff really wants these back markers to get out of the way, because any form of slow up, any form of mid-corner trouble could cost him his very slim advantage here as we enter the final stages of this race. Just over 1.5 tenths of a second here as we go into Cascades, and like I say, it could get held up here a little bit by the back markers as they go through Cascades, and actually Addy a bit wide, losing a bit of time.
Ragnar's on the phone. Gene could have looked like rock stars, and the leaders there, first and second, get through. Ulf Olsen, the next car up the road. Addy looked like he took a bit of a shallow line in, and he was almost the next driver to catch a little bit of grass at Island Bend and end up in a very, very compromised position. Still got Barry Hills and John Morgan not too far behind that. That didn't look like it helped Ragnar Wisloff, but it didn't look like it helped Ross Addy.
I think it was more down to the fact that Addy really compromised his run through Cascades, maybe the double wake. Massive aerodynamic understanding, basically Adrian knew. The double weight coming off the cars ahead, really giving him a lack of downforce going through there, which cost him a little bit, but the gap remains ever present at about 1/4 of a second, and certainly pushing really hard for Russ Addy on the exit of Druids there.
I felt very smart the other day when I was helping my friend refuel his Formula V, and I googled, how fast do things go in a siphon? And the formula, as you look at another very classic incident, it's the square root of 2 times gravity multiplied by the height difference between the surface level of the fluid in the top container and the exit of the siphon hose. So siphons go slower on Mars, and for every time you double the height of the siphon, you only get 42% more flow.
That's incredibly intelligent what you just said, but unfortunately my brain is too small to take it in. So I'm just going to have to continue to watch the racing action that we have here for your final 5 laps of the 60 Plus Racing Adventures season, and I'm hoping it's a little bit more understandable than what you just said, which is no detriment to your description, more detriment to my brain power.
It took me reading it about 3 times to work it all out and what it meant as for how long to try to refuel a race car. But Addy looking around, pressure on. Was Wisloff just a little bit wide at the double apex across there? It doesn't really give Russ Addy an opportunity. In some cars, you can try to outbrake at the final corner here. If you get a good run and it's a long braking zone, you can do it. In these cars, most braking zones are not really long braking zones. We're not driving touring cars that reach high speeds but with long braking distances. We don't quite reach the speeds, and we carry a lot of speed through the corners and can brake quite effectively. In front of them though is a battle for position between JC Hay and Ulf Olsen, less likely to want to quickly move out of the way of Wisloff and Addy with 4.5 laps to go.
Yeah, and this is really the crunch time here. Those back markers again potentially going to hold up Wisloff, but potentially benefiting him here as he gets a nice little tow. But like you say, these cars only weigh around about 500 kilograms. That's ignoring driver and fuel, so give or take, let's say 650. So a really, really light car. And as you see, I think that's Ulf Olsen getting out of the way there. The drivers are nose to tail exiting Knickerbrook, and it's not really an opportunity to pass here down into Druids, but it certainly may be. Wisloff takes a nice bit of corner speed through, but could be compromising his exit here down towards Lodge Corner.
Addy's close as he's ever been, not looking to move in the final corner. Interesting, he was right up underneath with an opportunity. Didn't take it. 4 laps to go now, with Wisloff leading Addy, Hills leading Morgan, Gary Byström leading Bill Smitham, Mike McCormick up into 9th, 15 positions gained, leading Douglas Beasley and Richard Coulomb. And that's the live shot there. He'll be looking to leave them behind if he can, and got a bit of work to do though to catch Randy Shoemake in 8th. That looks another 6 seconds up the road. He's not worrying about track limits as he does it though.
No, absolutely not. Pushing as hard as possible. And if he wants to beat the tally set by, I believe, Randy Shoemake in race number 1 of gaining 60 positions, he's going to have to overtake the man himself. But yeah, just not long left here in season 23, and it's all up for grabs for the final win of the season.
Absolutely, it is. Wisloff leading 3/10 back Ross Addy, as they've been for a good while now, but with Addy just not willing or able to find a way to overtake. It's Barry Hills a little off his line there, but John Morgan still oh so patient. Some traffic coming up from them, a little bit of tyre smoke in the air as it's deceptively bumpy on the braking zone on the way in there. If you've ever lapped around here in one of the Australian supercars, you'll know they will find any bump in the braking zone as a reason to lock up a brake. But for Mike McCormick, the last of first challenge is off because he's found the wall once again.
And that's a shame as we watch a replay. It's going to be Druids, his arch nemesis, once again on the exit. Oh, it's so easy to do here at the Druids corner. And that car looked relatively fine when we saw it for the first time, but I can tell you, it certainly isn't. Well, we've seen a lot of racing adventure and racing tonight. And if you too want to race in the 60 Plus Racing Adventures League, hop over to the iRacing forums if you've got an iRacing subscription. If you don't, iRacing.com to get yourself one. And if you're over 60 or even over 70, or any age you want really, type it into the forums, the series name, and maybe you two can be racing here on RaceSpotTV next season.
So this is going to be the replay of Ulf Olsen, and just gets the braking wrong in way too hot. Barry Hills gone off. John Morgan in the podium position. He waited and waited and waited, and it was given to him. Elsewhere, Richard Coulomb inside the top 10. Not looking like there's too much damage on there, but John Morgan into a podium. Barry Hills drops behind even Mike Grandy in 4th.
And like you said, dread it, run from it. John Morgan's podium will arrive here as he snaps his fingers as we see that incident between Richard Coulomb and I'm not quite sure who else because the number's missing off the tail. But that's unfortunate, and you certainly wouldn't want to be driving a Formula car without any rear wing.
Could have been Beasley now that he's on pit lane to get his car fixed. I'm putting 2 and 2 together, and I'm hoping the answer is 4. This is what happened for poor Barry Hills. Not even an inch, maybe a millimetre of grass on the turn in to Druids.
And now we'll be able to buy 2 sausage rolls. £2 richer now.
There you go. I've never had £2 in my life. Oh, super defensive from Wisloff because we're coming towards the right flag. Russ Addy is turning the aggression up 5 notches on the dial. Wisloff sees it coming, but with the white flag out, one last opportunity. He's looking to the inside of turn number 1 is Russ Addy for the race lead on the shallow entry. Wisloff cuts him off a millimetre from disaster, but Wisloff keeps the lead, and Russ Addy is left with egg on his face and a diminishing number of opportunities to look for a race win in the final race of the season in 60 Plus Racing Adventures.
How about that for racing action through turn number 1? That was a fantastic sweeping line from Ragnar Wisloff, just using the aerodynamic advantage of just taking more speed, but has a compromised exit off Shell Oils, and he could be vulnerable here, down into his slops.
He lit up the rears, he got sideways, it was squiggly, it hurts his drive off that corner. Meanwhile, Russ Addy has the traction, they're side by side, you'd want to be on the inside. He touches the grass, does he get the... He gets the tyre bundle, and for Russ Addy, his dreams disappear. He'll still be the champion, but he won't crown it in the fashion he wanted. For Ragnar Wisloff, he's headed towards the checkered flag and a race win. The track's narrow here. It narrows, and he just gets the grass sideways. Bang, nose first, and leaves the wing behind. Ragnar Wisloff, one corner left, fighting tooth and nail on this final lap for a race win to set himself up into the history books, and he gets the race win. Ragnar Wisloff, gloves off. Russ Addy, he's trying to hold on for second. He's got nothing, but he will. They're either side of him, John Morgan and Mike Grandy, and they can't get him. Addy still makes a second place of that. Morgan still gets a podium. Grandy, Barry Hills and Gary Bystrom not able to take anything away from him on the final lap. They were all covered by about a second place through to sixth at the end.
Fantastic racing there to the line, and that's just the fantastic, well, the best way possible we could end this season. Full of drama, full of action. And it's been a pleasure broadcasting this with you, David.
Full of sausage rolls, apparently.
Full of sausage rolls and genetically engineered grass.
That's what we're using to make the hay that we feed the cows to make the milk, and winners drink milk. Last driver across the checkered flag is going to be Jerry Kerr in 14th. It all lit up like a firecracker on the final 2 laps. That's the ending that 60+ Racing Adventures season deserves. Ragnar Wisloff the winner, but seriously, look at this margin. 2nd, 3rd, 4th. They were 3 wide in a salute for the end of the season, and the checkered flag there with Addy from Morgan, from Mike Grandy, Barry Hills and Gary Bystrom right behind, and then Bill Smith and Randy Shoemake, Richard Coulomb, Franz Josef Sturm inside of the top 10, and he will be the biggest mover, the most positions gained in race number 2. Bob Kern and Eugene Clark 11th and 12th there. And again, Douglas Beasley and Jerry Kerr, the last drivers on the lead lap. JC Hay just off it. Gerhardus Jorrison likewise. 2 laps for Gene Moore. Mike McCormick, race 2 just was not his. And Bruce Poole, Ulf Olsen to 20th there. And then the last drivers, John Hill, Pierre Zione, Frank Butler, Paul Stump, and Steve Greenwood. What a final race from Oulton Park. And is it the same drivers to chat with us again? I think it is Will Chadwick. We should, swap this up like speed dating. So I guess I speak to Russ Addy.
Yeah, go for
it. Put your party hat on. Pop the party popper. Congratulations, season champion Russ Addy. But did that end the way you thought that final lap was going to go down?
Woohoo! You gotta try. It's what racing's all about. You gotta give him space, and I got a little too far to the left and caught grass. So, you know what? You gotta go down fighting.
You did, and all the way to that checkered flag as well, because you took the injured car to still have second place. John Morgan and Mike Grandy giving you a sort of 3 wide salute to your championship, I guess.
Yes, thank you. It was another great season. Unfortunately, Ragnar wasn't around as much, and hopefully the weather picks up so he can go boating more often. But yeah, it's just a great bunch of guys and so much fun to do.
He does want us to call it a boat and not a yacht.
Yes.
But, that's just a little thing of personal preference. He's a great competitor, and I mean, how do you feel about that final lap? Because it was close at points, but I think he seems like a fair guy.
Oh yeah, no, he and I are on endurance team together, so we both left each other enough room that we'd be okay. And as I said, if I hadn't touched the grass, he still would have won, I believe. But it's you got to keep him honest.
Absolutely. Don't let him get too cocky or give him anything for free, because one day the sea will freeze over, he'll be here for every race.
That's right. And I do appreciate you guys broadcasting. As I say, I always do well on your broadcast.
Yep, you say it. I reckon it holds true in a championship sense, maybe not a race sense today.
Well, you can't win them all, and it's great fun. And I do want to thank Randy, my teammate, in our team competition. We took another victory there. So, yeah, it's consistency. That's what it is. Gotta be consistent.
Perfect. I'm sure plenty more 60-plus racing adventures to come, and you sound well jazzed about it.
How can you not be jazzed? Come on.
All right. Catch you around. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Really appreciate your broadcasting.
Thanks, Russ.
Will, it's your turn to congratulate a champion, the Super 70s champion, John Morgan.
Well, the Super 70s champion, the inevitable incidents on the podium. As always, John, taking a podium, or at least you always do in our little live broadcasts. Congratulations on your Super 70 championship. What would you like to say in terms of your race today, and how did it develop?
It's sort of typical for me. I'm pretty patient, and starting 7th, they just, it seemed like they just sort of slowly moved out of my way and off the track. And, I had a good time chasing Barry. We had a good race there in the middle. But, again, this track is so tough to pass on. And just waited him out.
Yeah, and we saw that you waited it out. You managed to get that chance down to get another podium this season. 70-plus champion. Nearly there in the overall championship. Is that a goal you have going into the next season of 60-plus Racing Adventures?
Yeah, I like at least to be in a position to sort of challenge for it. I mean, Russ and Ragnar and the guys who are in Paul, the guys who run up front, and Steve next year. Steve Greenwood's going to be back next season. It's a very, very fast group up front. So I think next year it's just going to be tougher to be sort of up in that group. But again, I'm a patient driver. So, just being consistent and trying to put those points up.
Well, congratulations, John, on your Super 70s championship. And thank you for racing with us here today. And we look forward to seeing you again here on RaceSpotTV. And congratulations, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, William.
Well, David,
what happened to Randy Shoemake? We had him.
I don't know.
He's gone.
I don't know.
For shame. What a great finale to the 60-plus racing adventures from Oulton Park. Racing all the way down to the line, and shows that, well, Ross Addy can come away with the championship. He's got to work like hell for it. And after Laguna Seca, Iowa Oval, Manicure, Road America, Sonoma, the Nordschleife, Hockenheimring, Fuji, Long Beach, Sebring, Gateway, and Oulton Park, your outright champion, Russ Addy, your team's champion, R&R Racing, and your Super 70s champion, John Morgan. Well deserved from all of them. And with some luck, we'll be back on RaceSpot TV for next season, the 60-plus racing adventures. Until then, though, thank you so much for joining us. Go find 60-plus racing adventures on their forum and subscribe to us on RaceSpot TV. We'll catch you around.